NewsX World, and thank you for bringing so much insight to that topic. Now we move to Central America for our next story, where El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has defended a constitutional reform granting him the right to seek indefinite re-election and condemned critics who said that it represents growing authoritarianism in the Central American nation. This comes after El Salvador's Legislative Assembly pushed through a constitutional reform overnight, eliminating presidential term limits, fueling concerns that it paves the way for President Nayib Bukele to indefinitely stay in power. Opposition Congresswoman Marcela Villatoro declared that democracy in El Salvador has died after the constitutional reform was approved by 57 votes to 3. Villatoro also accused fellow lawmakers of dealing a death blow to the country's democratic system and compared the move to the collapse of democracy in Venezuela. We're now joined by Irina Sukerman, who's a senior journalist. She joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Irina, as always, for joining us here on NewsX World. Irina, Nayib Bukele is a huge figure in global politics since his huge crackdown of gangs in El Salvador. However, El Salvador did have a constitutional limit of a 2-term time in office. However, Nayib Bukele then has now legally extended that. What are the worries surrounding this? What about Nayib Bukele's leadership style can you see possibly turning into something problematic in this regard?
Thank you so much for asking. So the critics are naturally concerned that the elimination of term limits paves the path for authoritarianism and for further consolidation of power outside popular and democratic norms. They are concerned that Bukele's consolidation of power will not end with this measure, and that he will then take measures to eliminate any sort of opposition and so forth. However, the real problem in El Salvador is not Bukele's decision. The real problem, as with any democratic country, is the failure of civil institutions and the failure of civil society. The reality is Bukele does not need to purge anybody for the democracy to be suffering from significant shortages. There is a reason why his party is dominating the parliament and why he had to get rid of the judges from the who were appointed during preceding administrations. There's also a reason why he is as popular as he is. El Salvador was a mess before he came in. The gangs were essentially destroying the country, and the opposition parties, and Bukele has gone through a number of them before finally settling in his own New Ideas party, have been failing the voters. This is why the support for Bukele has been so overwhelming despite Western criticisms. I think it's easy to criticize when you're living in a prosperous, well-organized democracy, but when you are but El Salvador was virtually on the margins of being a failed state, and Bukele's coming essentially entirely reorganized the country into something that is now functional. Now, does he really need to fear popular dissent in the future? I don't think it will be necessary so long as the opposition continues acting the way it does, essentially focusing on Bukele's person and on the technicalities of the democratic process rather than reevaluating their own strategy and why no one wants to vote for them. The fact is, Bukele has faced rather undemocratic meddling from the opposition that essentially tried to bring the United States to meddle into internal matters of the country, and that has had links to authoritarian structures around the world, including Venezuela, which is to say that the opposition first needs to become fully respectful of democratic norms and fully respectful of liberal ideas before it can launch this sort of criticism effectively.
Yes, Irina Sukerman, thank you very much for your insight. You are staying with us for further updates.